Grandfather, could you please describe the social life in which you and your friends participated? Were there special gathering places, special events that you attended with your friends? Well, we lived in Dechan during the time of occupation. Later on, we moved to Jakova. In Jakova, I had a lot of friends, especially those from the madrasa of Shkup, like Harula Zherka, Ram Zherka, Jevdet Shehu, and many others that went to school together in the madrasa of Shkup. But in the meantime, I had left the school, as I said, during the time my father was put in jail, and so I couldn't, stay alone in Shkup. And so I came back and worked for my father's business. And then later on, as I said, I finished the professional high school and obtained my diploma in Prokuplje. So later on, I got enrolled in the commercial college, and after I finished 2 exams, as I was getting ready to do the 3rd exam, the principal of the college called me to say that I could not continue my studies anymore because he had received an order from the committee of the party in Pristina that had ordered him to do it. That Luka Vlahovic was the person that signed the letter asking the principal of the college to expel me. So when I noticed I was not going to be able to continue further education, I gave it up, so to say, and started working. Was your family religious? No, not really. My family was not religious. Did you celebrate religious feasts? Yes, we did indeed celebrate the Bayram, which is a Muslim feast, every time. And to sometimes, the grandparents also fasted during the Ramadan. But nothing special. Religion was nothing special. We never went to the mosque or any religious sites. Except for the Bayram, no other Muslim or other religious event was a big deal in our family. So in general, we were not very religious, but we respected everyone, every religion, regardless of what religion that was. My father always respected the imams and supported them financially, and he did the same thing with the priests, the Catholic and Christian priests. So I should also mention an example of this. When King Zog was getting married in Albania, he had invited my father to the wedding, of Zog in Tirana. At the same time, Zogu had also invited Hafiz Efendiya. Hafiz Efendiya, I'm now recalling his last name, was Hafiz Efendiya Palaska, from a very well-known tribe. But Faniz Efendiya had no means of transportation. So he had asked my father to loan him a horse that he could use to go to Zog's wedding. My father didn't want to attend the wedding, so he didn't want to have anything to do with people in the politics. So he loaned Hafiz Efendiya the horse so he could go and attend Zog's wedding. So he went to Tirana, he participated in the big wedding, and on his way back, he spent a night in Tetova. So I'm not sure whether in Tirana or in Tetova they left the horse not unfed. So in Titova, the horse passed away, and so they had to find other means of transportation to come. And so Hafiz comes to my father and says, I'm very sorry, and that the horse is gone, is dead. And so my father didn't ask for compensation. He just said, I'm glad you made it all right, and let's not talk about the horse anymore. So this is one of the examples that shows my father's generosity towards people of religion, and his decision not to be involved in politics and not to be seen with any political leaders, including King Zuk. A lot of people that came in Jakova to our stores after World War II were always supported by my father. So, people would show up to the store and say, hey, the mayor of Jakova sent me to get a good sent me to get some good apples, and so the people would think that because they'd go to get apples on behalf of the mayor, they would not have to pay it. But my father asked for the money. He says, no, I'm not going to give it to you for free. If the mayor wants to have apples, he has to pay for the apples. So a lot of people would have, working for the politicians, would be angry with my father. The mayor Stumbulic had called my father to say, why would you not give the apples for free? He says, my father, it's just a store. We take money for our products. And so he only got more respect by doing this. So he would support the people who needed support, the ones who were in great need. He would always support them and never ask for money, because he understood the person actually needed his support, especially the poor people that he supported by giving food and even money. He'd give foods like beans and corn and salt and sugar so that the poor people would survive. Did you have any role models growing up and during your childhood? To be honest, I didn't have any role models. I didn't even know what a role model meant at that time. I had good friends. I liked my friends, and we always had a good time together. And so, every time I'd go to Jakova, I'd meet my friends and have a good time with them. Vahapshita, Haidolajerka, Jevdache, and other friends like that I was together in the madrasa of Shkup with. But, nothing special, nothing particular.
Please, can you tell us what your parents and grandparents tell about being Albanian? Our grandparents, concretely my father, he felt always as Albanian. He felt even that usually in our place in DioGuardi, it was mentioned a lot of times as he's a Turk, as a time from Turkey, and the word was used, he's a Turk. But my father always said that we are Albanians, we are from Albania, but the Turks here just went through this way, and they couldn't do nothing to change our nationality, even that we have the names as a Turkish, but the names they didn't do nothing. We have respected our nationality. Do the grandparents and your parents told about the occupation of Kosovo after the Balkan War for the Serb occupation, and what was what they said for Serbs? They told us, but they didn't want to teach us with these things, political or in army way. But we ourselves, we was educated, and we saw the treatments of the Serbs to Albanian. Always they didn't. They said that their place was not here. This place is Albanians, belongs to Albanian, with more than 90%. We are Albanians here, so they didn't said something special in that way. Maybe sometimes they wanted to imponate that you are in Serbia or something else, but we have considered Kosovo as our place, especially this place where we have in DioGuardi place as a Jakova, Decan and Peja. In that way they couldn't do in a national way. When Nazist occupation started in Kosovo, and how was the life in that time? In the occupation time I was almost 17 years old. I was in the secondary school of Skopje with King Alexander I, so I had to quit, and I started in Decan to help parents how I could in my father's shop. So we have lived from 38, 39. My father came to Decan, and he used to work with trade. In most of cases, he did trade with different cultural things, with fruits, buying and exporting. Usually, we sold to the soldiers, also in trade centers. So fruits was for Bosnia, and he was connected with some Slamic brothers in Bosnia, and through them he exported apples, especially apples, and fruits was not too much in our place in Decan, but the best things we have exported, and others he did drinks, so he used, and those to not be bad. Please, can you tell us about the history of Hebraians community in the Second World War? Before the war, where they have lived in Kosovo? Hebrains in Kosovo, mostly they lived in Pristina. One small number they lived in Mitrovica, but long time ago, for example, in the time of Turkey, they lived in Novo Bordeaux. They came in the place where they, in the beginning, came to work, and after that they came in Pristina, especially in Pristina. There was around 300 families with 300-400 members of their families. I have the lists of them who lived in Pristina and Mitrovica with name and surname, and those people who lived here. And in DioGuardi place there was a small number, 2 or 3 families, and personally I knew one. He was a director and some trade guys. But here, Mitrovica and Pristina, there was with a lot of people, especially Pristina. Please, can you describe more details about the connection of your father with Hebraeus in the Balkan, saying the names and where they lived. When your father started to work as an aphorist and or trade, tell us about the business of your father with them. I have a document which my father started in 1931 working with Albanians, especially with some from Greece, as is Joseph Besusan, through who he transported different things to Selanik. So sometimes he writes letters. I have one letter too, where he known him with the prices of the things how are in Selanik. From there he started. So he, for 3 or 4 years he didn't work. He stopped to work after the fermentation. But there was some others, as was Slavo Comforti, Rafael Nadan, David, Sabidai, and some others, through who he worked, and he transported, especially to United States, through Greece, and there was packed the place to 50 kilos, because as my father said, when they push from the trucks to the ships to not be destroyed, he put the two to 50 kilos. It depends where it was destinated, and sometimes we send to 100, 102 kilos. So from 38, 39 year, he worked intensively with Hebraeus, but through Hebraeus from Skopje, as was Salman Comforti, Rafael Nadan, and they sent their representative to Deccan to live and to work. When we have worked and put the things in the packages, he monitored, and after that we put in one other machine, and small things he took to analyze how it was good or not. So from Deccan, in that time, with very difficulties, we have transported to Greece, in most cases. So one of them, he was one Sabida. His name was Sabida. I don't know his surname. Always he slept in Deccan, and he monitored the things which need to be traded, and he was present when we saw how many kilos was from the workers to be transported. But from Deccan to be transported to Selanik, usually we had with horses to send from Deccan to Peja. To the train station. But after that, it was a big concurrence with trade, sales and buying, and small people small number of people, they trade these things, but the municipality of Peja, they decided to not let to work in this train station because they said that there will be a lot of people, so we had, I mean, to do it through the train station in Fosno, but we didn't know, they didn't know that this station belongs to the Peja station, and after that he had to go in Uimir or Dobrovoda, so with horses, and he took these things in Uimir, and then he transported to Selanik or for Belgrade or for Croatia and for other places. So lately, those who was interested to transport, it was Ali Dula and Rizvan Ali family. They have ensured the trucks, and with trucks we have transported to the train station in Peja and in Uimir. And these Hebrews, these people who did trade, where they lived in Skopje. They had their representative, as I said, Sabidal, who monitored of the things that we have to transport, or the skins, because when the Bayram was, we have cut, as we say, kurbans, and our father both, and my uncle, he prepared his brother, I mean, he prepared the skins, and we sent to Belgrade and Subotica. So they lived in Skopje, but we had very good phone connections always, and they was very correct until there was in danger for their life. So they had, from the year 1939, their families, they came to live in Deccan, and to live in Deccan, there was some families, they offered to my father that in our neighbor to build one house only for them, and they wanted to finance it. My father didn't want. He said, I will build, but not with your money. I will do it with my money, so you will see that for 6 to 8 months the house will be built, so you can come freely here. So in the end of neighbor, my father built a house for them, and in the first floor it was a depot, and in the second was 2 places to live. So through the depot it was a place where from the war, in the beginning of the war, when they was in danger to be departed from the zone, it was a place through which they went down, and they go through the different neighborhoods. They went to the Reznigi, to our cousins, and for 3 or 4 days they stayed there until the danger went, so they came back again to live. Usually they lived in Deccan.
Did your parents have friendships with the Jewish families? Grandfather, please tell us the names of the Jews that your parents and your family had relationships and with whom and with what you know about their lives. Yes, indeed, my family had a very good working relationship with the Jewish families. They were very correct in doing business, and they were very trustworthy. For example, they would send hard cash to my father for paying the products that they wanted from my father. Sabitai, as I said, was the representative of the Jews at our house. And right before the World War II, the families of Natan, the Solomon, and Conforti, and Masha Conforti, and David Levy were the Jewish people that came to our house before the World War II. And they were all kind of family related, and they saw our house as most secure. As you know, these Jews being relatives to one another, and they would call other relatives that they could come to Dechan. And Dechan and our house was a transit point for these Jews that wanted to actually go into Albania. As you know, most of these Jews wanted to go into Albania because they knew they were safer there. And so during that time, it was better and easier to cross into Albania through Dechan, Jakova, and Prizren than directly from Macedonia. So my father, with Ali Spahia, Hassan Ramadzardza, and other businessmen from Albania that my father worked with, he could arrange the transit and transport of Jews from Dechan into Albania, where they would be safer and secure during World War II. And so Ali Spahia was a very good friend of my father, and he was the same age as my father, and so he worked together with my father in saving a lot of Jews that passed into Albania. Was your family aware of anti-Semitism in the rest of Europe? Partially so, I would say. My father could have known something about it. I'm sure he did actually know about it. He would read the press every day. I was young at that time. I didn't know what it meant. And my mother was not the kind of person who knew anything about it, that would tell me anything about it. But my father was very well aware of it, and that's why I guess he offered the Jewish friends a guest house that he built in our own yard, that he paid by himself, even though the Jews wanted to pay for it. But my father insisted he'll build the new house, and until the new house was built, he took in these Jews into our own family house, and groups of Jews showed up once the house was built, that my father protected and fed and made sure had a secure and safe residence during this time. You know, other Jews would come in to ask for Solomon, David, Comfort, and others. And these groups of Jews would stay there a couple of days or so, and my father would then arrange their transportation into Albania. In order to travel into Albania, you had to be a resident of Dechan, for instance. My father had good working relationships with Arif Alichkay, a secretary in the municipality of Dechan. And since a lot of these Jews spoke some Serbian, we would change them with, we would give them Muslim, Bosnian names, and then the municipality would issue him Bosnian ID cards, and they would then cross the border into Albania as Bosnians. And their major destination was Tirana. And some that some of the Jews couldn't afford to pay for transportation, and they would go walking into Albania. And most of the time, my father actually would organize all the kinds of transportation for them, so that he would take them all the way into Shkodra or Puka or other places in Albania. And those who could afford transportation, they would go by cars or buses into Albania. And when there was someone that was more authoritative and a businessman of the Jews, my father would tell the Rema and the other counterparts in Albania, they would send a better car to pick up the more important Jews that would be going into Albania. So once I remember that a taxi person came with a nice car that worked for Spahia, that took the family of Conforti and drove them into Albania. And the driver was German. I understood this way later on when I asked Hasan Rema, who was a person who spoke Serbian and German and Albanian, and then he told me that he was a German. And so in such cases, in such serious cases, my father would make sure that we would ask for the right person and the right car, like this German that could talk to the Germans on the road that would be stopping the car and make sure that he could get safe passage through German checkpoints and save the lives of these important Jews. So one time I was very eager to go and visit Tirana. So one time I got in the car that was taking these Jews into Albania, so that I didn't tell my father or my mother. I just wanted to go and visit Tirana. So when I went to Jakova, Irfan Pruthi, the chief of police, stopped the car and asked for our IDs and where we were going. And when he saw me, he asked me to get out of the car. I said, "No, I'm not getting out." He said, "Are you getting out of the car, or am I getting you out of the car?" So when he said that, I said, "No, sure, I will come out of the car. You don't have to take me out of the car." So I had to get out of the car, so I couldn't go to visit Tirana then. And then I only visited Tirana after the liberation. So no one that came through our house was taken from the Nazis. But this also was a great effort on the Spahia family part in Albania, who would make arrangements for our Jews to go there. And so, the Spahia family would find places to live for these Jews and would actually give them jobs, so that, they would give them names in Albania that the Nazis would not suspect that these were Jews and not Albanians. So after the war, of course, they, used their real names and their real identity. But the Spahia connection with my father worked tremendously well in making sure that the Jews that came through our doors were saved. So in 1949 and 1950, Solomon Conforti had gone to Thessaloniki, and he had been here in Pristina too, because he had always kept corresponding with my father through letters. He came to our house, spent 3 days with us. I was building my house in the Nushici Street. I was still fixing the house, and Solomon Conforti in 1950 had talked to my father, because they didn't talk to me. They were kind of afraid that I was young and could do something stupid to tell the authorities that we had Jews. Even though this was in 1950, he still offered to my father money to give, to help me build my house. And of course my father didn't accept it. He said, we didn't do you a favor for money, we did you what we thought was right to do as Albanians. So he spent 3 days with our family and wanted to meet with Professor Beqir Kastrati. Because Beqir Kastrati, during the time that the Conforti family was in Deçan, he lived in Peja. The Conforti family had 2 daughters, Estere and the daughter of Solomon. Whose name I can't remember at the moment. So the Conforti family wanted their 2 daughters to learn from this Professor Kastrati, and so my father then also secured an apartment for the professor in Deçan, and also got him a job as a teacher in Deçan, so that he could live in Deçan and not travel from Peja to come and teach the Conforti daughters the French language. They wanted to learn the French language. They wanted their kids to know foreign language until they left after the war, or when they went into Albania. So Solomon came back after the war to meet my father from Thessaloniki, and through Athens, and his brother called Israel lived in Rome, and later on in Milano, and Raffaele went to Argentina. So we have been in touch with these people, but not a whole lot. So except for the Solomon who came over and visited my father, the other 2 brothers, we heard only a little from them. Israel and Maurice were brothers of Solomon, and the father of Solomon had also come through our doors, and he was very sick, and he had died while he was in Peja, and he was buried in Peja. What was your family's reaction to Hitler's rise to power in Germany in 1933 and to Nazis' activity in Western Europe before they invaded Kosovo?
Niveli populatës jonë nuk ka qenë në atë nivel që me dite me çmu pasojat që vishin.
The people in our region were not very well informed on the consequences of the Hitler rise to power. My father always knew something bad was going to happen, but the general population, we have to accept, was not well informed. It did not actually foresee or understand what was going to happen in just a few years after Nazis took over the Western Europe. So a lot of people actually did have some positive reaction to it, but in general I should say the Albanian people did not accept warmly the rise to power of the Nazis and the occupation of Kosovo. As you know, Italians were first in Kosovo. They occupied Kosovo first during World War II. The Italians were not as tough as the Nazi Germans. So, the Albanians were not very against, so to speak, against the occupation, even though there were movements against it that fought for the liberation. Could you please tell us about the circumstances under which your parents responded to requests from Jews for shelter from the Nazis?
Për fat kushtet ne
Well, to be honest, indeed, I have to admit that because of the work my father had done as a family, we were doing very well, and even though during the wartime the business was not going very well, my father was still managing to have enough to support our family, and he was still doing some business with Albania. Starting for me, because I was married when I was at a young age, my sisters and my mother we were all very socialized, and we were all very well connected with one another, and also with the Jewish families that lived with us. To be honest, they didn't speak any Albanian, so we couldn't be very close to the Jews we had in our house. But because we spoke some Serbian, me and my wife, and because they spoke some Serbo-Croatian, we could manage to understand one another. We had no feelings against them. We had sympathy for them, and at that time the head of the household made the rules. So whatever his behaviors and whatever his attitude towards the Jews were the attitudes of all of the members of the family. It's not like now where everybody in the family has their own attitudes. At that time, whatever the head of the household had decided, whatever he said needs to be done, that was done. He wanted them in the house, we accepted them in the house, and we were nice to them because we felt sorry for what they were going through. My father would take these Jews to tours of Peja and Jakova and Dechan to visit the mountains and the nice natural resources and the natural beauties of the Dechan mountains. Even though they had no good roads at that time, my father still managed to get these Jews out from the house on horses, walking, so they would, see the rest of some natural beauties of Kosovo. My father was always interested in making sure that they had a nice life while they were with us. He always wanted to make sure that they were well treated and well fed, because my father was hoping that things would change for the better. So we had a very good working relationship with and a very good relationship with these Jews. Could you tell us what you remember about your parents' decisions and plans to save their Jewish friends and other Jews? Well, as a family, we had no plan to save and invite Jews to be saved here. The Jews that my father worked with were already in our house before the war started. So, seeing that more Jews were coming to our house because of the Jews we already had in our house, they had connections with Solomon, Raphael, David, Pepa, Abish, Israel, and the rest of the Jews that were with us. So their other Jewish friends would come to ask for their friends, and what could we do? We always wanted to do everything we could to support the friends of the Jews we already have in our house. We felt sorry for what they were going through, and we would support them with all the means we could. In our own house and in the guest house. They would stay for a night, 2 nights, or longer, as long as necessary, before they could find ways through my father's support to go into Albania. But the families of Conforti and the others that I mentioned before stayed with our family for months. But I have to let you know that there was the 5th Brigade, that were the anti-Jewish people, would come to our house every time to ask whether we had Jews in our house, whether we were protecting Jews. There was a person named Hassan, whose last name I can't recall, who was a member of this 5th Brigade of the Nazis, that every time he heard there was a Jew that is living somewhere in the neighborhood, and he would bring in the Nazis to take these Jews in. Well, thankfully, we had most of the soldiers that were Italian, but he was still in charge of collecting old Jews around. So one time, you know, he shows up to our house and asks my father whether we had any Jews in. And so my father told him, Hassan, I know why you're here, and I know that you're trying to do something against me and my friends, but if you do something, please know that I will know you did it. And so he said, no, I'm not here to bother you or your family. I just want to make sure that you're doing all right. And, you know, thankfully, he never came to our house again. He'd come in. He would come in for like lunch or something, because he wanted to see who was in our house, who was living in our house. But he was getting paid to do this. But, you know, he never brought in the soldiers to get our Jews, and he actually didn't know. And actually my father threatened him. He said, you know, we were in school together, but if something happens to my family and my guests, you know, I will know it was you behind it. And then we managed to go through that entire period without major incidents. All of my father's employees that were working for my father were local people. It's still, we had 2 other people, one from the local neighborhood and one from Reznigi, and a cousin of ours, a nearby village, that would live with us, and they would protect the stores of my father. So these people would protect the stores of my father, and they protect us. They were armed, but my father was very well respected by people in the DioGuardi area, and so even the Nazis had some respect for him and didn't come to our house to collect the Jews. Number one, they didn't know we had Jews for sure, and number 2, they didn't want to disturb my father. So, you know, we had a lot of support from the community because my father was giving jobs to a lot of people. And so when we needed the community's help at that time, we did get it, because a lot of people respect my father because he was a good person and also was you know, a good businessman that gave him jobs. So my father was always honest in his businesses, which is why he earned the respect of the community. He never betrayed people in business deals. We never had any problems with anyone. My entire family was doing all right. And even though we had those Jews living with our family for months, we did manage to go through that bad time successfully, and some of the Jews that lived with us ended up in Argentina, Italy, and all of them went through Tirana.